A gracious good morning or a glorious afternoon, whichever it is for you. We're going to be beginning the second passage of Beowulf, where Beowulf, our main character that we're finally meeting, hears about Grendel's attacks on the Danes and the Danish king Hrothgar's mead hall. So let's begin. When he heard about Grendel, Hygelac Thane was on home ground over in Geat land. There was no one else like him alive. In his day he was the mightiest man on earth, high-born and powerful. He ordered a boat that would ply the waves. He announced his plan to sail the Swan's Road and search out that king, the famous prince who needed defenders. Nobody tried to keep him from going. No elder denied him, dear as he was to them. Whilst he moved about like the leader he was, enlisting men, the best he could find. With 14 others, the warrior boarded the boat as captain and canny pilot along the coasts and currents. Who is Beowulf's king, and why refer to him this way instead of by his name? Okay, what we're doing is we're being given the relationship that Beowulf has to his king. We'll find out later that Beowulf is actually nephew to the king. But here we're being told that Hygelac is the king of the Geats. And so we're being reminded of Beowulf's place in society and who he's got allegiance to. He gives additional information. How many men did Beowulf bring with him to Daneland? And what does this say about his confidence? Well, we see down here in line 207 how many he brought. If you add himself back in, whether you remember it or not, in the first passage we learned that Grendel killed and carried off the bodies of 30 men in his first attack. And Beowulf's counting himself how many? What does this say about Beowulf's confidence? Alright, let's move on. So they boarded the ship and their journey begins. Also, you'll notice the ellipses means that I've cut outlines of text. These texts do like to go off on digressions and remind you about things that happened in history or in other stories or things like that. So we cut that out in order to really kind of focus on the plot in the way that we would think of it in the more modern way. So Beowulf's traveling over the waves, and with the wind behind her and foam at her neck, she flew like a bird until her curved prow had covered the distance. It was the end of their voyage, and the Geats vaulted over the side, out on the sand, and moored their ship. Then the watchman on the wall, the shielding Danes' lookout, whose job it was to guard the sea cliffs, saw shields glittering on the gangplanks and battle equipment being unloaded. He had to find out who and what these powerful men were. He rode down, this horseman of Hrothgar's, and challenged them in formal terms, shaking his spear. What kind of men are you who arrive rigged out for combat in coats of mail, sailing here over the whale road in your steep-hulled ship? I have been stationed here as lookout on this coast for a long time. Never before has a force under arms disembarked so openly. Nor have I seen a mightier man-at-arms on this earth than the one standing here. Unless I am mistaken, he is truly noble-born. So now, before you fare inland as interlopers, I have to know who your father is and where you come from. So he's wanting to know who these guys are. They're armed and ready. They could be an invading force or pirates or something like that. But he does notice that one of them stands out as extra noble looking, which of course would be our hero. Beowulf, as leader, unlocked his word hoard. The distinguished one delivered his answer. We belong by birth to the Geat people and owe allegiance to my lord Hygelac. In his day my father was a famous man, a noble warrior lord named Ecgtheow. He lived many long winters and then went his way. Over all the world, men wise in counsel continue to remember him. We come in good faith to find your lord and nation's shield, the son of Halfdane. Give us the right advice and direction. We have arrived here on a great errand. And so tell us if what we have heard is true about this threat, whatever it is, this danger abroad in the dark nights. this corpse maker mongering death in the shielding Danes' country. I come to proffer my wholehearted help and counsel. I can show the wise Hrothgar a way to defeat his enemy and find respite, if any respite is ever to reach him. Ever. I can calm the turmoil and terror in his mind. Otherwise he must endure woes and live on with grief for as long as Heorot stands at the high horizon on its high ground. So Beowulf has uttered his first flight here. He's saying, we've heard about this monster, this corpse maker, very good kenning there. And, we want to help if it's true. And Beowulf goes on actually to even say, only I can defeat this monster. If I can't, then you will forever have this monster. Now, I've cut out quite a bit here because there's some long back and forth with the guard, and then they go in, land, and there's some digressions talking about the building of Heorot and whatnot. So, I paraphrased it here. The guard decides to trust Beowulf and his men, escorts them to Heorot. At Heorot, when his men tell the king who has arrived, Hrothgar remembers when the young man was a child and welcomes him. At Heorot, his men tell the king who has arrived. Hrothgar remembers Beowulf when the young man was a child and welcomes him in. Now Beowulf's going to flight yet again. Beowulf greets him. Greetings, Hrothgar. I am Hygelac's kinsman, one of his mead hall troop. When I was younger, I had great triumphs. Then news of Grendel, hard to ignore, reached us at home. Sailors brought stories of the plight you suffer in this legendary hall, how it lies deserted, empty and useless once the evening light hides itself from the heavenly dome. And so every elder and experienced councilman among my people supported my resolve to come here to you, King Hrothgar, because all knew of my awesome strength. They had seen me boltered in the blood of mine enemies, when I battled and bound 5 giants, raided a troll's nest, and in the night sea slaughtered sea terrors. I have suffered extremes and avenged the Geats. Their enemies have brought it upon themselves. Now I mean to be a match for Grendel, settle the outcome in single combat. And so my request, O King of the Bright Danes, dear Prince of the Shieldings, friend of the people and their ring of defense, my one request is that you won't refuse me, who have come this far, the privilege of purifying Heorot with my own men to help me, and nobody else. I've heard, moreover, that the warrior's bane shuns in his reckless way the use of weapons. Therefore, to heighten Hygelac's fame and gladden his heart, I hereby renounce sword and the shelter of the broad shield, the heavy war board. Hand to hand, bare hand to bare hand is how it will be, a life and death fight, but with a fiend, whichever one death fells, must deem it a just judgment by God. If Grendel wins, it will be a gruesome day. He will glut himself on the Geats in the battle hall, swoop on that flower of manhood as on others before. Then no death shroud will have to cover my face. He will carry me away as he goes to ground, gorged and bloodied. He will run gloating with my raw corpse, and feed on it along, smearing touring scraps of my flesh on the walls of his moor nest. No need then to lament for long, or lay out my body. If the battle takes me, send this breast webbing that Wieland fashioned, and my sword Negling, which Hethril gave me, to my lord Hygelac. Weird goes ever as weird must. So we already talked about what Beowulf flighted he could do. So be sure to answer that using complete sentences. Also, I do put footnotes in to help you with words that you may not know. Moving on. How will Beowulf fight Grendel? He sort of portrays it as he's wanting to be fair, so he wants to fight in the same way that Grendel fights. How is that? Well, and what's his real reason for that? He says it there in right here, in these lines right here. Beowulf, of course, says that, as far as number 5, what does Beowulf instruct for his burial? Should Grendel kill him? Beowulf says there's not any need to bury anything because Grendel is cannibalistic. He eats humans, and he, of course, is descended from humans as a monster. Beowulf's possessions, number 6. What should happen to Beowulf's possessions should he die, and why? Armor, the chainmail, the shield, the sword, all of those things were made from metal that was really hard to get a hold of and refine to that level. So all of that is actually the wealth of the family, and to lose it would be an incredibly great loss financially to the family. So he wants to make sure that his armor gets back to his family. Now, scanning back over all the red words, you can look back at our notes and you can see what those devices are and explain them for me. And once you're done with that, then you can submit this assignment.